Good evening. The meeting for the Winthrop Town Council for January 7th, 2014 is now called to order. Would you all please rise, and Councilor Biagian lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Have a moment of silence for Paul Frazier. Paul was a Board of Health Director here in Winthrop for many years, passed away suddenly over the weekend, so if we could have a moment of silence for Paul. Thank you. Council Clerk, would you please call a roll?
Councilor Del Vento.
Present.
Councilor Boyajian.
Present.
Councilor Terry.
Here.
Councilor Sanford.
Here.
Councilor Calla. Councilor Mayo.
Here.
Councilor Boncory.
Here.
Vice President Barone.
Here.
Council President Gill.
Present.
Thank you.
Quorum has been established. The minutes for the executive session, November 19th, 2013, is circulated. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Sanford, seconded by Councilor Del Vento. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. December 17th, the minutes, December 17th, 2013, is circulated. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by
Second.
Del Vento. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Welcome to our new councilor at large, Rich Boyajian. Welcome to the council, and congratulations on your successful election.
Thank you, Council President.
Okay. Thank you, and congratulations as well to Councilor Barone, Councilor Del Vento, and Councilor Stanford. Thank you again for putting in for your service for another 4 years, and congratulations on your re-election. Next item on the agenda is the election for the vice president for the 2014 year. I'll open it up for nominations. Do I have any nominations? Council?
I nominate Councilor Del Vento.
Okay, Councilor Lettieri nominates Councilor Del Vento. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Sanford. Is there any other further nomination? If not, declare the nomination closed, and we'll take a roll call vote. The vote will be for Councilor Del Vento to be vice president. Yes vote is for him to stay, and no vote will be for him not to. Would you call the roll, please, Councilor?
Councilor Del Vento.
Yes.
Councilor Boyajian.
Yes.
Councilor Terry.
Yes.
Councilor Sanford.
Yes.
Councilor Calla. Councilor Mayo.
Yes.
Councilor Boncory.
Yes.
Vice President Barone.
Yes.
Council President Gill.
Yes. Unanimous vote, 8 to nothing. Thank you. Congratulations, and thank you, Councilor Del Vento.
Thank you, fellow councilors.
So do you move?
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll do that next week. I'd just like to pause for a minute to thank the DPW. Steve is here tonight, and the public safety chiefs for the tremendous job you did over the weekend with the snowstorm. It was exemplary. I know that all three of you are operating, doing more with less, more and more with less and less, and I appreciate it, and the council appreciates it. It was a great job. I got all sorts of good compliments from citizens on all of you. One citizen complained, so I appreciate it, and I'm sure the council does.
Just one thing.
Yes.
Just before we move on from the vice president, I'd just like to thank Councilor Barone. I think he did an incredible job this past year. A lot of the times over the past X amount of years, 7, 8 years, it's been a little more ceremonial, and I think you've brought it to a new level, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Put the pressure on Council Del Vento now.
Pardon me?
Put the pressure on Council Del Vento.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Maybe it's because you had a good president to work with.
There we go. That's right.
The presentation for tonight about the Winthrop Street corridor has been rescheduled to the next meeting on the 21st of January. They requested to be moved ahead because they were not available tonight. Public comment. Moving on, correspondence. We did have a letter from Stephen Roussel, who just wanted to have some input when and if the citizen input becomes available for the Suffolk Downs negotiation. And we talked about the fact that we already had the committee meetings and so forth and so on, but I told him we would keep him posted. Finance Committee, Councilor Del Vento.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee was unable to, due to the holidays and inclement weather, to hold a meeting on the three small items that referred to it. The transfer of $20,000 free cash to contract services, traffic study, transfer $15,000 from the council reserve for town managers, contract services for economic development, and a $9,900 transfer from council reserves to the finance department contract. I would move that the finance committee, I would request the finance council committee be relieved of its duties if there's no objections and have those items heard tonight for a vote.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that up under new business. Fiscal Capital Policy Committee.
I would report to the council, Mr. President,
Yeah.
that the committee has developed a final draft policy statement, and will meet at the next chance it gets when we post a meeting, I think, together with the Finance Committee, to review that and finalize it for a recommendation to the council.
For the next council meeting?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wynn from the Finance Commission, just going to give us a brief report on your findings on the water sewer reserve.
Would you like me to come up here?
There's-
Yeah, that'd be good, yeah, right up
Yeah.
next to
Yep.
Mr. McKenna, that's great.
I don't have that strong a voice tonight. Thank you, Mr. President. Back in October, the town council, through President Gill, referred to the Finance Commission a question about whether or not the water and sewer enterprise funds retained earnings, which for fiscal year 13 were much higher than they had been, were excessive, and if they were, what could we do as a community, or you as a council do, to reallocate the excess? I'll probably start at the back with conclusion and explain how we got there. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the report that we prepared, but with the help of Jim and Tim Gordon, we were able to get a good amount of information that helped us analyze and evaluate the question. And I think our conclusion was that despite the relative spike in the retained earnings of both accounts, they were not excessive and out of line. We do think that the town should perhaps look at a policy and come up with a figure that is appropriate. The numbers that I'm going to talk about in a moment are representative of a large portion of the Commonwealth, but they don't necessarily fit our needs. So this is something that needs further consideration and discussion as we go along. What we did is we got data for fiscal year 2012. And we have to remember that retained earnings are a rolling figure. They change and carry over year to year. And so if you have a number at the end of fiscal 12, it will either go up or down depending upon how the revenues for fiscal year 13 compared to expenses for fiscal year 13. And at a point in time, you're seeing the accumulation of many years' worth of water and sewer receipts and expenses. We have data for fiscal year 12, which set the benchmark for our evaluation of fiscal year 13, which is really the question posed to us. We looked at the information from 163 cities and towns, which included 32 MWRA communities and a variety of smaller communities within that group that are comparable to Winthrop. And what we found, somewhat to our surprise, is that the average for the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings for this group of 163 communities was 25% of the water revenues for that year. So if you had $1 million of water and sewer revenue, you would have $250,000 of retained earnings. In fiscal year 12, the MWRA communities that were part of this study came in at 24.95%, or virtually 25%, right on line with the 163 other communities, or communities that were looked at. Winthrop, at the end of fiscal 12, its rolling amount was 11.75% of our revenues. So looking at that just as a standard, we were below the 25% mark. In the sewer, it was very much the same result. We looked at the same group of communities, and we found that the average was 25.53% of retained earnings to revenues. In the smaller subset of the MWRA communities, it was 24.45%, or virtually 25%. We even went a step further, and we looked at communities that were, again, comparable to Winthrop in terms of revenues in both the water and in the sewer. In the water, that group had a retained earnings of 35.3%. And in the sewer retained earnings, it was 24.92, or again, 25%. So we came away from this saying that 25% in water and 25% in sewer is a reasonable benchmark to measure against. May not be proper for Winthrop, as I said, but it's a reasonable benchmark to compare ourselves to. Then we get into fiscal year 13. In fiscal year 13, the retained earnings in water grew from the figure of 10 point something percent, 11.75%, to 21.52%. So there's a large growth, and in terms of dollars, that went from a retained earnings figure in fiscal 12 of $292,000 to roughly $594,000. So big increase, and that's what kind of caused people to say, what's going on, which caused the council and us to get involved. Same thing with the sewer. The growth in the sewer is even more significant, because in fiscal 12, we actually had a slight deficit in retained earnings, about $38,000. And in fiscal 13, that grew to a plus $525,000. Big change. Percentage-wise, however, again, retained earnings to the revenue, it's just under 11%. And again, the benchmark is 25. So while it's a dramatic change, it's not necessarily out of line with the balance of the communities that we looked at. However, it did cause us to ask why. Why did this dramatic change occur? And it looks like there were a couple of reasons, a confluence of several different things that would not normally happen. And I think those things are apparent. What happened in December of 12, just a little over a year ago, the Department of Revenue was going to certify our tax rate, but they looked at, as they were looking at our books, they saw that we had a collections problem, slow collections in water and sewer. And they felt that if that continued, we may have a deficit situation on our hands in water and sewer, and they were reluctant to certify the property tax rate. So one of the solutions to that was to increase the rates mid-year, which was done. And so that the water and sewer rates for the second half of fiscal 13, which would have started in January of 13 and go through July or June 30th. Remember, calendar years and fiscal years are a little mixed up here. So the rates for the first half of 2013, calendar year 13, increased. That gave the additional revenue that was needed to give the Department of Revenue the comfort to certify our tax rate. In addition to that, we had an aggressive policy of collections. So those slow collections, a lot of those were caught up, and in the first 2 quarters of the new calendar year, revenues were on track. So we had a combination of increased rates, but also improved collections. And then finally, some of the more delinquent payers, their properties were put on lien. And the result of that is, on an accounting basis, is it moves the deficit from the water and sewer to real estate, which then clears that from the water and sewer departments. So at the end of the year, these 3 things coming together resulted in the large increase versus the prior fiscal year. The other thing that became apparent is the town has never had a policy of what retained earnings we should target to achieve each year, or to continue rolling over from year to year. So I think one of the issues is that we feel, and I think talking to Jim and Tim, there's a general agreement, we should, as a community, have a policy. So we'll have a target. And if we exceed that target, then we should have a plan on what to do with those additional revenues. We also talked about a few other ideas during that time, and it was clear that if we are going to do a policy, and we actually, Tim found two policies, one from the town of Natick and one from the town of Weston, and I don't think a lot of communities have such formal policies, but they have policies, and they, in there, they were able to identify a certain percentage that would go toward, I don't know what we'd say, Jim calls it maintaining an ebb and flow, so that if there was, if there was slow payments or usage changes, you'll have a small amount that will keep a balance so that it doesn't create a major problem, so that the state doesn't come in and say, oh, geez, we think you're going to have a deficit, and all of a sudden you're looking at at rate hikes in mid-year. You avoid that, and then maybe you have a second tier that would say, we might want to have a reserve for unexpected water main breaks, or we may want to put some money toward paying off some debt, however. And you could even have a third tier that says if it's above this, it'll be returned in the form of a rate reduction, or it'll go to pay down loans on a more rapid basis to save interest, whatever it might be. But you need a plan, and I know that these guys have already thought about it and have some good ideas. And then finally, we got into some what-ifs and came up with a couple of thoughts, and that was we could change the structure a little bit. And instead of having two enterprise funds, we could have one enterprise fund with two budgets. And we would take the needed revenue, which is a function of operating the departments, and the charges back from the MWRA, which is the bulk of it, and try to put it together so that we could even out water and sewer rates, and or we could even go one step further, perhaps consider one rate for both departments. And if there's any excess, we could go the route of perhaps a stabilization fund, specific stabilization funds, which we've talked about under looking at the capital plan. So there's a lot that can be done if the council chooses to go that route. But I think at the end of the day, we found that the anomalies in 2013 that created the excesses or the unexpected surpluses wouldn't and shouldn't happen again, and their plan would certainly take care of that. And that even with those unusual excesses, those unusual increases, they were not excessive and were well within the limits of the other communities that we studied.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Very comprehensive report.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Moving on. Comment, Mr. Your report, sorry.
My report, okay. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
Time's up.
Okay. You have a copy of a letter that I had drafted for MSBA. They had requested essentially informed consent on behalf of the town for the design change for in view of the fact that pending flood maps may be adopted for Suffolk County. We have to make some elevation changes in our plan, and the MSBA wants to be assured that the town is aware of that design issue, and now we'll go back on January 15th and fold that into its thinking and see how they can work the numbers, so to speak, consistent with the vote, consistent with the budget, to see how we can adopt a plan that will take that into account. It's the feeling of, most that have discussed this, I think, at the school building committee level, that indeed, I think the better part of valor here is designed to the worst case scenario, and not take a chance and under-design the elevation such that we fall into a very difficult situation in the future. So the design can be change can be made. It can be made within budget, and I just want to inform the council and make you aware that we have to send that consent letter over to MSBA. We did receive correspondence from FEMA regarding those flood maps. Some of you may have received a letter directly. There is a meeting on January 22nd in Revere, which I and my public safety team plan to attend. It's the formal coordinator meeting, which is critical in that it really starts the clock to tick on the 90-day period of comment and appeal. If we disagree with the preliminary plans, then we have to file an appeal. And I want the council to be aware of this meeting. I would encourage anyone who's got interest to attend it, so you can get firsthand from FEMA, what the substance of the analysis was that produced these, and why the changes, and what's the programmatic differences going forward for people who have to carry flood insurance, and how do we articulate that to our community, and how do we measure the effect, and what's the process if we object. So there are multiple levels of inquiry here that we want to make, and certainly, I'm looking for direction from the council as if you anticipate an appeal. I would need to start that analysis, because we'll need fairly sophisticated assistance from an environmental scientist to analyze these maps and to be able to justify such an appeal.
Is that something each and every city or town has to orchestrate on their own, or is that
Well,
something we can do regionally?
the maps are adopted on a county basis, and so perhaps out of this meeting will come some coalescing of the interests of Suffolk County, Boston, Revere, Chelsea, and Winthrop, and I hope that we get similar concern expressed at this meeting, such that we can come together and look at a possible shared, effort. I don't know. That remains to be seen. I've asked the Metro Mayors Coalition to take the issue up, and it's been put on their agenda to be discussed as a serious issue for metropolitan Boston. So, there's hope that there's awareness that this is indeed a significant impact to coastal communities, and we'll see what kind of interest we get on that
I think
level.
that's something we need
Yeah.
to pursue. I think in
Right.
numbers, there's strength, and I think individually, if we go at it with each city and town, it could be an expense.
That's right.
Extraordinary expense each city and town, and we won't have the clout that we would have,
Right.
so.
I know the speaker is very concerned about the issue, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll guide us, as well on the issue.
Councilman Peel?
Yeah, so this meeting on the 22nd, is FEMA coming just to say what they're doing? Are they going to be able to answer specific questions that people have regarding, just what you're talking about? I mean, what's the appeal process? I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? As the council at Sanford said, do we do it alone? Does it happen by a neighborhood?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I know that Marshfield appealed, okay? And certainly we can look at their appeal and consider how they did it, and see if we can learn some lessons from them in terms of what's required. But that said, the letter, if we take it on face value, they plan to bring, their best folks there to identify issues and to respond to those issues. So I hope that they're prepared to deal with what we're going to sort of raise as concerns and address them. They should talk about their process, what went into these plans, how they came away with this data change, as significant as it is. They should talk about, what the appeal process is. If their letter is true, they say that the detail of the appeals process will be discussed.
so
Is there go on, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Oh.
Has it been any addition? I think Congressman Markey's or Senator Markey's office
Yes,
was involved. Is
That's
that
right.
still?
Yes, we're still
something
talking with
happening?
Patrick Lally, who's been a great assistance on this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I'm certain that they'll have representation there as well.
Council? Mayo, did you have anything?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could put that meeting on our town calendar, because people do go to that. 'Cause-
Is it an open meeting, or is it for invitees?
Yeah, it looks like an open meeting. It wasn't,
It doesn't say it's exclusive, the letter.
and
It
they
was-
have to have a public session
They
regarding.
said that they would have a subsequent public session for Winthrop if we requested, which we certainly would. It says here, please feel free to pass this invitation along to other community officials who would benefit from this meeting.
Yeah, that's how I read it too, and that they
So-
would then have a public,
It seems like it's officials first, to get the first
But they want an
briefing.
RSVP as well as to have.
Yeah,
Because you have this is a window, I understand, like a 90-day,
90
right.
days.
so if this starts, when does the clock start? Are we on the clock already?
It'll
or-
start at the end of this meeting. The
Tonight.
Subsequent day, no,
That-
this
The
meeting.
22nd.
Right.
Okay.
So we should probably send notification to
Yeah.
all of the committee champion people
Yeah.
and all department heads.
Yeah.
But probably not to the public at this point. Okay.
Okay. We received correspondence from the DOR, which I would like to read into the record, because it's the first time I ever got a letter of this nature. I didn't think they were capable, no, I shouldn't say that. I'll hold on that comment. It says, "Dear Mr. McKenna, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you and the town of Winthrop for having your FY14 tax rate approved on December 18th, 2013. A review of the balance sheet approved for the close of FY13 for both the general fund and enterprise funds revealed positive certifications in all categories. However, we knew it was coming. As we have discussed, there remains concern associated with your enterprise funds, where a couple of the retained earnings, though positive, are somewhat small in nature. Winthrop has traditionally set its balance sheet in prior to the annual tax rate approval. As it appears that this is not an inconvenience, I will require that the balance sheet be submitted and approved prior to setting your FY tax rate, 15 tax rate. Sincerely. So it's a compliment on the one hand and a caution on the other. But I'm happy to get that letter unsolicited from Mr. Jerry Perry.
I think the second, the however, is being addressed and has been addressed over the last several months
Yeah.
on the enterprise accounts, including the one that Mr. Wynn spoke about tonight. So we were in deficit in enterprise accounts. We're now in the black in enterprise accounts, but they would like us further in the black.
Yeah. Or at least I think showing a number of years of success on this, and not just 1 year of measure. I have submitted to you the capital plan for FY15. I can't believe I'm actually saying that, FY15. Thanks to Tim Gordon for leading the charge here, and also for the department managers who stepped up and gave significant input on the plan. Again, it's the 5-year plan that we're required to submit to the town, and we do this in anticipation of the budget process beginning, so that we can study these in particular and anticipate what your priorities would be as a council, so that we can fold them in to recommendations in the budget as we put the budget together. I would ask that this be forwarded to the capital subcommittee and to be given further review. And we prioritize them according to input from department managers, and also using as a benchmark what we feel is essentially, about a $500,000 experience in capital spending that we certainly hope continues for this year and this budget. So, it's an exhaustive list. We've got plenty to do, and not enough money to do it. And this really shows that story. I have already discussed the fiscal policies memo. Will be coming out at the next meeting. It's in development and will be voted on by the committee at its next meeting. I am initiating the recruitment of a director of inspectional services. I've sent out prior memos to the council. I think it's important that we get somebody that's fully licensed as the director, and also combine our inspectional services under one roof. All of those departments need to work collaboratively now. The idea of the picket fence in inspections is just fraught with problems. These folks need to backstop each other. They need to share information. They need to work as a team, and they need to really go out as really in assistance to one another. and be there to be backstop if someone's on vacation and whatnot. So we need much more cohesion and coordination there, and I need somebody who's fully licensed at the state level to lead that. As a municipality, we need to have licensed inspectors. Mr. Barrett has served very admirably, but he is retired, and he gives us a lot more than, than what he earns, certainly, in terms of hours. But, he can only carry the ball so far down the field. It's important that we move forward on this matter. And so I'm looking for support from the council to go forward with the Director of Inspectional Services and build that into the budget as an initiative.
Are we looking for one director for both health and building?
We still need a health agent and a sanitarian. So that's a specialty subset. But I want to bring it under a director such that it answers to and
But you expect the director to be the building person?
Yes. Primarily, it's building code and whatnot. But inspectional services requires a number of codes to be enforced: electrical, plumbing, gas, weights and measures, and as well as health, sanitation ought to be folded in under that.
Council Verone.
So we would hire someone in addition to John Barrett. He's not leaving, right?
He would go to a sort of a junior role, more consistent with his time availability and his function, and he would be what we call a local inspector, which he does have a license for, to be a local inspector, and he would help assist in the whole of the effort, but would not be the primary director.
Further questions? So what we're looking for is somebody who's the director of like a building commissioner,
That's right.
who's also a building inspector,
That's
who has an assistant building inspector.
Who has a local inspector to go out and do field work and whatnot on a sort of ad hoc basis. Yeah.
So,
Council Mail?
so where would the inspectional service person, because you're a little light over on the health side too, or you have two people there, or 1.5, or what's going on?
More and more, we're realizing that we need to, the challenges that we've recognized in terms of our grease traps, for example, initiative this fall has been significant. Staying on it, not having a one-time event, but actually making sure that we follow through with quarterly reports as well as perhaps annual reports on that aspect alone. As the risk to that of not doing it and doing it consistently is huge to this community. We paid dearly for this Putnam Jefferson Street project because of grease. Well, we can't allow that to happen again, and we need follow through on that piece. That takes bandwidth. But we've got a whole host of sanitation issues for commercial vendors, for restaurants, for schools, everywhere. And not to mention that we've got a lot of other health-related matters that are now developing that need to be, have direction as well. So a lot of that inspectional piece, though, can be folded in under the direction of a director. We don't want it to be in isolation. We want it to be in concert with all of inspection, and so that it collaborates and works together.
So, if you don't mind me plugging along on this, see, to me, I think you got to, first of all, I don't even want to ask where we stand on the rental ordinance, because that's got to be bogging action down. And a lot of these inspections have to be fee-based. So to me, this is sort of a revenue neutral goal on this particular side of the street. So based on the fact that it's revenue neutral, see, I look at this as an operating department. And you make a structural change, and you have you have an inspectional services person, okay? And then you can lay out the rest of the team, get them into one unit, and get them to be revenue neutral. See, you bring somebody in there, this is your business, boys, and let's get it going.
That's precisely what the goal is, Counselor.
By the time you hire them?
As soon as possible. We're working on all these fronts, and we're recognizing that this really needs to be in place, as soon as we can. That's why we're not waiting for a budget to get adopted. We need this now, and we need to move forward with it. We're going to hire within the beginning of fourth quarter, and get someone on board, and then roll it into the budget as a as a full complement.
Council Boyer,
So what is the certification that's required that, I guess, on the level, the state level? And
It's
Are there a lot of
substantial.
these
Yes,
folks
there is,
available?
and it's a 3-year review on a commissioner, at the commissioner level. You don't just come in, with a builder's license and say, I'm now, no. You have to, there are exams, there's scrutiny with public safety, Department of Public Safety, they license you, they provide a whole host of, licenses that go with this, and so it's a rigorous.
And this has been successful in other communities as far as
Oh.
doing what you're talking about,
Yes,
coordinating this?
Yes,
and-
yes, absolutely.
Any further
It's the
questions,
typical
Counsel?
model around us. Yeah.
So, just out of
Councilman?
curiosity, what do you think a good person's gonna set us back? It's gonna be a cost.
75,
How much?
75 to start.
And that's gonna get you a good, solid person that can handle a department of 5, 7 people?
That's the low range. That's the low end. I would say that this goes in from 75 on up to in the low 80s.
See, because I look at an issue, and this isn't just doing the inspections, this is setting up a department. This is a person that has to set up a department. There's no real structure there, there's no real reporting, it's all paper, it's
No, we've got some solid foundation to start with. It's not been, completely, without, a good professional input. We've got a good, clerk. John's done a decent job, but it's grown bigger than what we have now, and we need to have the higher level of coordination than we have at the moment.
Council
Any
President?
further? Yes,
I
Council
just,
Boyer.
Is there any data that shows that this type of a hire will improve and increase the, I guess, the revenue gain through these inspections? I don't know if that's even available.
Building departments use the common, budget response that, they're usually the golden goose of departments that bring in a lot more revenue than they cost to the town, generally. And that's true with Winthrop. What we're seeing, though, is just much more administrative responsibilities of this department. So, some of it depends on volume. This year, we've seen building permits up, a pretty good tick. Thankfully, our new growth, that number that you saw come in, 30% higher than budget, is a consequence of building. And that takes review. We've got plan review that has to happen. We've got site plan review process that has to happen. The building inspector attends zoning board meetings, gives input on all those issues. There's just a lot of work there that needs to be done administratively. That's not just, some of it can be fee-based because we need to do plan review, and we adopted a fee to do plan review. So yes, that'll help offset some of that cost.
Any further comments, questions from the council? If not,
We have appointed Richard Safuni as facilities manager. I provided that letter to the council. Richard will be reporting to Steve Kawa, Director of DPW, that department and staff are DPW union, so that department is a subsidiary, if you will, of DPW. We think that's a healthy chain of command and reporting for this hire. Rich has done a tremendous job over the past 5 months. He did a wonderful job outfitting our offices, being very economical and efficient with the build-out of the lower level at Town Hall. He's working very, very closely and very well with the schools and with Superintendent Massaro on the whole transition, and they're developing plans on the swing space, and Rich will be key in coordinating all of that. He's tackled some of the basic problems that we've been challenged with in some of the schools in terms of air quality, and found solutions. The heating issue at the Fort Bank School, the typical annual freeze up that we've all heard about and experienced, that went away this year because of Rich. He addressed it with an easy, simple fix. He just has a common sense to his approach on addressing, facilities challenges, and He's a great hire. He was second to Jerry Boyle in the full, review that was given to this position, so, his background was well researched. He has a contractor's license and significant experience on that side as well, so he has developed good relationships with the custodians. They respond and respect him. They're taking orders. And so, we feel very confident, and to get myself with John Massaro in making this appointment and aligning it properly under Steve Cowler.
Councilor Barone?
Yes. How many applicants were there?
Well, this was, we had, I guess, Steve, how many applicants do we have?
He was interim, we had an additional 2 applicants.
2 other applicants?
And did we interview the other 2 applicants?
There were 2 internal applicants, which we felt really weren't a fit for the job. So no, we didn't commit small interviews.
I mean, I remember an individual sending an email that had some impressive resume with licenses. Did we try to contact him for a resume?
The job posted internal. That's the process of the DPW.
Okay.
It only posts external. It's not filled internally. Richard was on the was working for the town, and he was able to apply internally. So that's as far as it went.
Thank you.
Councilor Boncory?
Yeah, just a question. Originally, when we set up consolidation, wasn't facilities manager like a department head?
Right.
Did we consider that to be, now we're changing that as far as the department head is going to be
The department
Public
head
Works
is
is
Public
gonna be
Works,
Steve.
is Steve.
and no future facilities manager will be a department head?
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct. It's
But that is a change that we have to make sure that we can clear.
Yeah, that's an important point. We feel that it's very appropriate to have this fully functioning underneath the DPW because of the need for equipment purchasing, supplies, support staff, use of custodians, our union under the DPW. It really wasn't good to have it as a sort of a squeaky wheel outside of that rubric, but rather fully incorporated under it.
Okay, and the school department's clear with that
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Because
This
as
was-
I said, this was part of the original consolidation.
Yeah, that's correct, and they've been advised accordingly, so I understand.
Any further questions from the council? If not,
I'm pleased to report that Officer Dawn Armistead has been appointed as School Resource Officer. The council saw fit to make that an emergency appointment, and we, through the chief, if you want to make a comment on Officer Armistead and her role and where she'll be utilized most.
Sure. Through agreement between myself and the superintendent, Officer Armistead will be placed at the high school. She'll be communicating with the other schools on a daily basis as well. The position was made to be flexible, so it wasn't that busy at the high school, which was needed at the middle school. She could transit down there. There's an office that was set up at the high school. She'll be able to remote into the police computer systems by a secured line that's being set up by IT. So she'll have all the reports that she needs at her desktop there. So it was 3 other applicants, along with Officer Armistead. We felt that she was best fit because of her extensive experience with the current situations in both schools as a day shift officer. She also had a stint as a school resource officer in the past, and we just felt that she was the better fit of all the other candidates. Thank you.
And finally, I just wanted to ask the fire chief if he would come up for just a second and talk about 3 properties that we had to have some recent experience on. 48 Beacon Street, which we are taking some action on. 48 Beacon Street.
48 Beacon Street, which is very familiar to all of you. It's come to our attention, number one, that the occupant of that property will probably never return due to her medical condition. It has been an eyesore as well as just a detriment to the neighborhood. We were down there today talking to neighbors. The neighbors, especially the one right next door, takes good care or keeps an eye on it We are going to move forward and board the cellar windows and the cellar doorway. That is the only path of egress that we've seen that vandals or neighborhood use have got into the building. We went in with a key. We have the building padlocked at the town's expense. We went in and locked all of the windows on the first floor yesterday. We're going to move forward and board the basement windows and the cellar door. And the neighbors, that's their wish, because as bad an eyesore as it is, they don't want the whole building boarded. They agreed to take care of it, to keep an eye on it. What were the other two problems?
590 Shirley Street.
590 Shirley Street was the gentleman that we had a order. That building, it has been cleaned out since. We had an issue back in August where we had a hoarding problem. We notified the local attorney who owned the property. We cleaned it out with dumpsters. Over the day of the storm, we were at a call at 600 Shirley Street, the inn at Crystal Cove. We got a call for medical aid. This gentleman had refilled his apartment. The debris actually fell on him, and he was trapped in his own debris for a couple of days. He has been removed from the apartment. He's still in a medical facility. The owner of the property has, again, cleaned out the apartment. We have turned it over to the Board of Health, who is working with the senior center and the outreach program to see if this gentleman can go back into a four-family, if he's mentally capable of going back. So,
Finally, 9 Rear Cutler.
9 Rear Cutler, we're investigating a problem over this last cold spell. I removed the people during the storm. They said they had insufficient heat. They had a brand new boiler. This is a little bit bigger problem. I reached out to the gas company. I think they had a little delivery problem, meeting demand of gas in the town over that 2-day cold snap. They weren't willing to fess up that they were having a problem. They said to us, they addressed the problem. We're not aware of the problem. Although every gas pit in town had a gas crew at it during that cold snap, which time we feel that they were attempting to adjust the pressure or try to meet demand. But we agreed to meet after this cold snap. But I truly believe over this last cold snap, they had a delivery problem of delivering the product to the homes in Winthrop. Because an awful lot of the smart boilers, which they had on their incentive, switch to gas and we'll help you with the purchase of a boiler. The smart boilers were shut down due to the fact they realized the lack of pressure, and they just keep going through a recycling. So no, you definitely had gas. You normally heat your house with 180-degree water. In actuality, you were heating your house with maybe 120 or 130-degree water, which your house over a long period of time continues to lose temperature. So it's a problem we're going to address with the gas company. When we built a new bridge through a lot of efforts of Director Keller, we looped our gas system. Originally, we only had one gas line into the town, which came in the causeway through Beachmont. We now have an additional 8-inch gas line coming in from East Boston. But understanding all of the dynamics of the gas company, I'm not here to say I can do it, but there was a delivery problem, I feel, based on the number of calls we had. And the number of calls that we had, and the folks that had problems never had a service company come out. The situation took care of itself as the temperature, the ambient temperature rose. So that even plays into the fact that it probably was a gas delivery problem.
Questions from the council?
I just wanted the council to be aware of this issue as we're dealing with the utility. You may hear of some issues during these cold spells. The challenge of keeping, adequate gas, supplied to the community will continue to be a challenge.
On the Beacon Street house and other houses that may require our attention, is there in process a lien to go onto that property to
Yes,
cover our costs?
that's
So that
right.
when and if that property is sold, the town
That is the process, in
Good.
fact.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Old business, the transfer of the two $500,000 transfers are going to wait until after your committee meets. Council Del Vento on the other three? Did you have a motion?
I make a motion that the Council Finance Committee be relieved of its duties on the transfer of $20,000 for free cash to contract services for traffic study, for the transfer of $15,000 from council reserve to the town manager's contract services for economic development, and transfer of $9,900 from council reserve to finance department contract for cost allocation study.
Motion from Councilor Del Vento to relieve the Finance Committee of those 3 transfers that he just mentioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Motion, Councilor Del Vento?
Yes, Mr. President, just let me pull them up. The first one is a motion to move that the council authorize the town manager to engage the professional services of a traffic engineering firm to study the potential traffic impacts of the proposed casino at Suffolk Downs on the town of Winthrop. And to fund this study, I move that the council authorize a transfer from free cash of $20,000 to the contract services line item of the town manager's budget, or take any action relative hereto.
Motion by Councilor Del Vento as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Lettieri. Is there any discussion? Not? All those in
Yeah,
favor?
whoa.
Okay.
I'm not for this. I want to know a little bit more about where we stand with potential issues vis-à-vis any negotiations that may or may not be going on before I go off spending 20 grand on a traffic study. I don't have a problem doing it. I think it'd be a good thing, but I just don't know enough about where we stand to throw 20 G's at it. 20 grand. I'd take and have a vote on it, but that's not the motion, so.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Clarification on the motion is to get the town manager engage the professional services. If the motion passes, do you intend to engage the services right away, or do you intend to maybe do as Councilor?
I feel that my report tonight in executive session will be hopefully adequate to satisfy the issue raised, and I can clarify the issue, the need for traffic analysis to substantiate our position relative to the proposal.
Mr. President?
Is there any further discussion? Councilor Lettieri?
I would,
I'm sorry, Councilor Del Vento.
I'd like to withdraw my second on this motion and maybe wait until, postpone this until the following meeting.
Okay, Councilor Lettieri would like to postpone. Is there a
I have
second?
no objection to that, if anybody wanted to.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Lettieri to postpone, seconded by Councilor Del Vento.
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion to postpone? Councilor?
Discussion, is this time sensitive? Do you feel we need to vote on this evening? Can it wait?
Your authorization, I certainly would defer to direction of the council, obviously, in terms of when to, if we need to utilize this, and when we should utilize it. But Councilor Varone raises a point. We are in negotiation, and there is an accelerated process that's ongoing. If I were to wait another 2 weeks to get a council vote on this matter, it may, after tonight, put us 2 weeks behind crucial analysis that can be brought to bear on our position. So I appreciate the issue that was raised, because time is of the essence on this, and I would ask that you could certainly make a motion subject to further discussion that we have this evening, and I would take that guidance accordingly. But I would not want to lose 2 weeks, since we are under a fairly aggressive timeline in our discussions at the moment.
The motion has been withdrawn, and the second has been withdrawn. Could we have a motion back on the table with an amendment?
Mr. President?
Councilor?
Can I make I'd like to make the motion with the words, after authorized, if necessary, so that it would read, I move that the town council authorize the town manager, if necessary, to engage the professional services of a traffic engineering firm to study.
Okay, I believe the proper procedure is that we'll make the motion. As a new motion?
There's no motion.
Okay, so we have a new motion by Councilor, because the other motion was withdrawn, a new motion by Councilor Del Vento to insert the words, "if necessary," after the word "town manager." Is there a second? Second by Councilor Sanford? Is there any discussion, Councilor?
What does that mean?
That means that he has the money available, if necessary, to move forward. In other words, if after we hear what we hear tonight, I
Do
mean,
we
I don't
vote on
know if
that?
it's, if necessary, who determines if necessary? I think we can put that in his capable hands to determine if it's necessary or appropriate to, I believe that, is that,
Yes, that's the intent.
Council Brown?
On this motion, wording as necessary, would you be amenable to wording as directed by Council President instead of as necessary? I mean, because after this discussion this evening, we may conclude that it is necessary, and, the Council President would speak for the whole council at that point.
So if necessary as determined by Council President?
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
there's
Okay,
no
so
vote
the motion now reads as the original motion with inserted after the town manager, inserted if necessary as determined by Council President. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilor Sanford. Any discussion? Yes.
Defer to.
Go ahead, no.
If I recall, is this something that might be reimbursable in the future, aside from the negotiations? I remember way back when we had talked
Yes,
about.
yes, that
It's
is.
part of the
it's-
negotiation.
That's
something-
potential.
So that's something to consider.
Yes, it is, yeah. I wouldn't say that it's guaranteed. We have to apply for reimbursement of expense, but yes.
It would be part of the negotiated package.
If I remember correctly,
Right.
yeah, okay, just want to make
Counsel?
sure.
So are we going to be voting on this?
Yes.
We're going to be voting on this in executive session as
No.
to this action? So we're
No.
voting on it now, that's saying if we, and how do you determine, so we're saying you read it different than I do in the next session, then we're not voting. It's,
Say that again?
I said if we go in and discuss this, there's no vote on it in the executive session. It's
Right.
our interpretation of the,
Right. Further, yes.
On that particular point, I would hope that Council President in executive session would take the guidance of the full council.
Yes.
I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. There's been no suggestive behavior in the past that would suggest.
I would take the advice, but it wouldn't be able to be voted.
Right, yes.
I just don't know if I don't have any problem with it. The question is, what if it's a split, situation? What if we don't all see the same on it?
If you tell me in executive session and convince me in executive session that it should not be determined, that it should not be necessary, then I would certainly follow the wishes of the majority of the council. Any further discussion? If not, the motion is presented with the insertion after the words "town manager" in the first sentence, if necessary as determined by the council president. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain. I'm not
Okay, so it's
Sorry.
7, and with 1 abstention. Councilor Del Vento.
I have another one, and I move the town council authorize the town manager to engage the services of a qualified firm to study strategies for economic development within the town and to encourage the growth of tourism and cultural opportunities, to examine strategies for the creation and sustainability of small businesses, and to support increased ridership of the proposed Winthrop ferry, and further, that to pay for this plan, I move the council transfer $15,000 from the council reserve to the town manager's contract services line item of the budget, or take any action relative to thereto.
Second.
Motion by Vice President Del Vento, seconded by Councilor Sanford. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes.
I just want, the town manager want to give a quick 30-second brief on it, or?
Well, it's been, I think, very well debated among councilors that there is a clear need. If we've now, anteed up on the ferry, we want to make sure that's successful. I think it's important that we utilize professional assistance in guiding us to develop strategies for attracting tourism, developing a tourism economy in this town, looking at how small businesses may be affected positively or negatively by major issues that the town is dealing with. Look at a comprehensive analysis of where our good points and not so good points are relative to our commercial districts, and what we need to do to ensure sustainability of small business in this town. We have a number of folks who've made significant investments in this town and are still challenged significantly in trying to bring those to fruition. I think it's important that we use professional planning assistance that we can all agree on, that's objective, that helps us look a little differently at our critical economic area zones. We did get the town qualified under the state program as an economic target area. It's now time we utilize that to the extent we can to attract business and also to ensure sustainability of our businesses that are here. And I think it's time we looked at a comprehensive economic development plan for the town with some professional help.
I think that's up. Sorry. Any further?
Is this the Collins Center thing you sent?
Yes.
I think we've talked about economic development. Councilor Sanford is very much on top of that. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Vice President Del Vento.
I move that the town council transfer $9,900 from town council reserve 0111052576100 to finance department contract services 0113552544350 for the purpose of funding an indirect cost allocation study for town enterprise funds, to take any other action relative hereto.
Motion by Vice President Del Vento. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second for purposes of
Seconded
discussion.
by Councilor Sanford.
Mr. President?
Discussion. Yes.
Mr. President. I don't know if the CFO wants to brief us on this, or the town manager.
Certainly. We feel it's important to look at a rate study for our enterprise funds. I think the issue was well debated this fall. Clearly, it's important that we get confirmation or direction relative to where we are on our water and sewer rates. Tim's done a great job looking at firms that do these kinds of analysis, that look at our chargebacks, that look at the basic aspects of our rate structure, and advise us as to how that ought to be constructed and the justification for it. Tim, you want to add anything?
No, just that it's common practice, as we discussed in prior meetings, to charge indirect costs to the enterprise funds, all the enterprise funds. And what we have been doing in the past is limiting that charge back to water and sewer. It's at a rate of approximately 3%. What the study will do is it will validate what the actual burden is on the general fund that's being caused by these enterprise funds. So it's an effort to really assign costs to where they are being incurred. And I've reached out to a couple of firms, got proposals from two of them, and the cost is within a couple $100 of each other, and had discussions with representatives from both firms, and I'm confident that this work will result in a better understanding of what our indirect costs are and what the basis for budgeting our costs to the enterprise funds is as we begin this next budget session, the next budget season.
Further questions from the council? Discussion? Council? Mayo?
Excuse me. I'm going to throw caution to the wind here, and it's only because I trust what I've seen so far that I'm not going to be voting for this at this time. So far, Bob Wynn's group has come to me and said that despite what the political thought was in the fall about the subject, that our reserve structure was not egregiously high, it was incredibly low. And I'm going to think that if our indirect costs are not causing a stir, and they're an average, and we can find out that they're an average based on a routine call to other places, I trust your skills at this particular point in time to not be as curious about a couple of percent. And I know that that's not really great sound financial management, but we're going into the back stretch of this fiscal year, and I'm happy to sit back on this one for a while. And I think the money could, be used for other initiatives that, may help the town operate just as well. You've made a comment that your town was putting out 14% on chargebacks, and where you say somewhere in the 3% range. We saw that everybody thought our money going into the reserves for the water was egregious, and it turns out to be much less so. So I have to think that the prudent management that you're providing us right now is, let me not be thinking that this is $10,000 worth. So I'm gonna not push my support on this one for right now. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it's as pressing. I'm comfortable with what you have us with, so.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor DeVinto.
I do strongly support this. There's always been the little cloud that, are we charging the right amounts? We could always decide to not go with the percentages if it's higher or whatever we come up with. But there's always that cloud of how did you determine this number? When we're determining a fairly substantial amount of money, for the first time, we'll have some solid logic and basis behind where that number comes from, so that every time that question comes up, well, why is this charge back that, or why is this cost that, we'll have an answer. It's always been, well, we think it's about this, or we've kind of estimated it to be that, or but we've never actually studied it. We may be way off on the percentage. I agree with Councilor Mail that 3% is probably very low. It's probably more in the 6-7% range. But we can leave it at the 3. That's not anything out of our realm. But I'd like to know really where the number comes from, or what the real cost is.
Any further discussion?
Council President, the CFO, is this a standard practice in other communities to hire an external firm to look at that across, or is that not being done across the communities? And I guess, would the external audit of this be a benefit? How do you see it benefiting the community, I guess?
Well, it is, I'm not saying that every town goes out and has a study done, but it is common practice to be able to support your indirect costs, and that's really what this is all about. We will be budgeting a dollar figure to be charged to the enterprise funds in the form of indirect costs, but we can't support them. What we do know is they're at 3%, so it's not an alarming rate. We know that other towns are higher, but it still gets back to the point of, can we support the amount that we're actually charging? And there are other things that, for example, some towns will put health insurance and retirement costs into the indirect pool. We charge those direct. So if we pull them out of the direct charge and put them in the indirect cost pool, now our rate's going to go up. So there are different variables and there are different models out there, but I go back to the point, when we go to develop the budget over the next couple of months, I want to be able to support the amounts that we are putting in each line item.
I just wanted to say that during the fall, there was some citizen concern about the amount that was being charged off. And I know Mr. McKenna and Mr. Calla, before you came on board, Tim, had done a study, and they determined what they thought was appropriate. There was some question as to whether or not that was appropriate, and I would like very much to have an independent set of eyes come in and say, yeah, you're either too high or you're too low, and maybe we need to have more indirect costs shifted as opposed to less. So I feel that an independent outside set of eyes for $9,900 is an excellent investment. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion stated by Vice President Del Vento for the $9,900. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed?
Me.
Greg?
Yeah. Sorry.
7-1. Communication to the Gaming Commission is still on hold, tabled to February. The 2014 council committees as distributed. I won't bother to read them all. It finishes up old business on to new business. I've appointed for reappointment Jan Twombly to the Citizens Finance Commission. Very, very capable, dedicated member of the commission. And I would ask for a motion to affirm her confirmation. So moved by Councilor Terry, seconded by Councilor Varone. Yes. Eddie, did you have a discussion?
No.
No?
Not at all.
I just would like to say that I think we're very lucky to have her.
We sure are. She's tremendous. All those in favor of the affirmation say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Councilor Mayo.
Yeah. A motion is made directing the town council to discuss the feasibility of making the newly paved parking lots adjacent to Pond Street, the Dalrymple School, the Larson Rink, the Crest Ave parking lot, and extension, fee-paid parking facilities. Included in this new fee would be parking in the George Street lot. The discussion would be to instruct the town manager to create a new parking sticker enabling parking in the lot from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. daily. The automobile must exit the parking lot for snow removal in a reasonable manner. Violators to snow conditions will be subjected to ticketing and towing. Each parking sticker will enable the registered automobile to have a single reserved spot in the lot. The charge will be an annual rate of $375. The rate is in effect from January 1 to December 31st and will be prorated by the month. Motorcycles must also be registered for the lot. The space will be leased to the automobile provided all state and local taxes are paid in full. A valid paid Massachusetts automobile excise tax is required but does not have to be issued by the town of Winthrop. All money from this parking program will be used to fund a Parks and Recreation Department-sponsored program to establish a Khan Academy or other early learning programming. Parental funding will be required for a portion of the programming in line with other Park and Rec guidelines. The fund may also be used to fund mascots, SAT, character, wilderness, or parenting programming as deemed valuable by the superintendent of schools.
Motion by Councilor Mayo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Bajorgen. Discussion. Councilor Sanford.
You know, I've talked to a few folks who have gotten wind of this proposal, and I haven't had a lot of positive input. Some feel as though it's taking away an opportunity from folks who can't afford potentially to be able to lease a space and may need to take the opportunity to use that space in an emergency situation. I'm not sure. I like the content of the motion. I think revenue being generated and being assigned to a particular area has a lot of merit. I'm just not sure at this time it's something I want to invoke and go forward with from my point of view, especially since we haven't had any public hearings on it and any input from the outside.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor.
I have a question. It's always been my understanding that a fee is charged to cover a cost. Am I not correct in that assumption? Yes. So what is the cost that the town is incurring that we have to cover that person would be paying for that is relevant to the parking?
Well, if I could ask a question, if we change it from a fee to a service, or whatever we want to call it, so it's no longer a fee, would you then be in favor of it?
I'm not saying I'm not in favor of the concept. I like the idea of anything that would further the youth of the community. It seems like an arbitrary number, $375. I mean, do we have any type of hard data that how much money would you need for your proposal, and how much are we going to be taking in? You know, there's some questions that I think would need to be looked at?
What would those be?
Those questions that I just asked. How
So-
much is the cost, and how much...
Through the chair, please. Go ahead.
Through the chair, excuse me. How much is the cost of the proposed programs? What are the needs of the proposed programs, going forward? What if the costs exceed what we take in? What if they don't? Are we making money on this? I'm not so sure that I'm going to look at this right now.
Any further
Council
questions?
President?
Yes, Councilor.
I'll say that I do like the motion, and that I think that there's some valid points being brought up about things, but I also don't want to get bogged down in too much that this is an opportunity that we're not requiring people. It offers an opportunity for our constituents to be able to purchase something that they may desire that might actually create a revenue stream for the Parks and Recreation Department to use their discretion. I don't think that we necessarily have to define exactly what it is, but it offers almost, for lack of a better term, as a grant or a set-aside that the Parks and Rec can be utilized within the structure that's in here for early enrichment, the Khan Academy, but I don't think we necessarily have to tie it to a specific cost, but more of a revenue stream that they could utilize along with parental contributions to create such a thing.
Councilor Del Vento? Vice President Del Vento, excuse me.
Although I mean, concept, it's a very progressive, it's very thought out package. I have a number of concerns. The first being, if we sell out the spots at the rink, where's the rink going to park during its use? And you have to take into consideration, now we have the potential of taking all our a good push of our snow parking and charging people for it. How do you get in the situation if during a snowstorm, somebody pulls up to a spike and they have to start towing people out who parked in a reserve spot? At the rink, somebody's parks in your spot, we're going to a hockey game, they're going to come out, their car's gone. I think there's just a lot of issues around that. The intent, I think, is phenomenal. But the actual implementation of it, I think, is going to be extremely difficult on some of these lots. As well as, I think it needs to be written as an ordinance, as a change to our parking regulations. So I would think rules would really need to write the proper structure for it.
Further discussion. Councilor Mail.
I think Council Boncory has some value.
I'm sorry, did you have something to add?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, I'm
That's all
sorry.
right. I know this is a bad situation.
It's tough,
where
yeah.
we're sitting.
I'll sit on this side.
I like the concept of people being able to buy a reserve spot from the town. The problem that I have with it is I don't think it's been fully vetted by any committee with public hearings and so on. Second problem I have with it is who is going to oversee it? Where is that expense going into what department? If it's going to Parks and Rec, because it's going to fund Parks and Rec, which I don't think it can do, because I think anything that the town collects has to go in the general fund, and it can't go specifically to another place until there is another vote of the council to take something out of the general fund and put it somewhere else. So therefore, I don't think the motion is in order saying that you're going to direct it to Parks and Rec, or that you're going to direct it to the school department for MCAS scoring. I think it has to be done in separate chunks, Craig, even though I think your idea of selling some of these lots are good. I don't think it's feasible the way this is written.
Well, first of all, if you notice, this is not a motion it's not a motion. It is a motion for a discussion.
To discuss, that's right.
And so far, right now,
We're
I
having a
haven't heard
discussion.
anybody tell me that convinces me why this isn't a good idea. So let me go through some of the points that I think are important. First of all, none of these lots, with the exception of the George Street lot, exist right now. The new lot at the E.B. Newton is only a couple of months old. It was not there last year, so my guess is it can't cause a problem this year. The lot at the Pond Street lot was an unpaved lot. Now, I happened to go by there during the storm when we allowed free, unfestered parking, and quite frankly, the George Street lot, the Highlands Crest Ave lot, and the Pond Street lot were unable to be plowed because people did not move out of those lots. Now, we have no obligation as a city or town municipality to provide parking, okay? The fact is that many of you own your own home, and as a part of your house taxes is your land. My house was recently appraised for $320,000, of which about $160,000 was for the land and $160,000 was for the house, which means my driveway carried a substantial cost to me. Now, I am paying for my parking. Now, even though I'm a counselor, the town didn't come and plow me out, yet the people that park in these lots do expect to be plowed out. And my feeling is yes, there are a few quirky things here, but one, these lots don't exist. So we're not taking anything away from anybody that didn't have anything. Two, I have talked to a tremendous amount of people who at first said, whoa, and then said, wait, for $375, I can get my own spot. And I'll tell you something, I wouldn't be surprised if the people that live on Grover's Ave that have no parking at 105 don't rush to grab those spots immediately. And the people who live in the Crest Ave area, that lot was filled, and now they're going to have their own piece of the rock. And I think that this is a tremendous opportunity for the town to get a handle on it, to regulate the way the lots are handled, and to also generate some money. Now, if it has to go into a different area, I don't have a problem. I think these programs are programs that would enhance the school system and enhance the town. If you start a Khan Academy program and you touch out of your kindergarten down to your pre-K programs, think what young parents are going to think when they come to this town and see that we're touching their kids when they're 3 and 4 year old with early education programs, and we're going to be able to monitor those kids up through the most formative years of their education. So I put this through as a motion for a discussion, and I am happy to move at whatever public forum you want, but the fact that this doesn't look this and this doesn't look this, we can't drop this opportunity right now, and I would suggest that we don't let this fall apart and drift away. This is a tremendous opportunity and a tremendous service to many people in this town who do not have parking.
Council President?
Councilor Boyajin.
So I'm obviously new to this, and how do we move forward to, because it sounds like everyone thinks it has potential, but it also sounds, more towards let's put it away until it's made. How do we move it forward, keep it moving, I guess, instead of letting it die in committee? I don't know the proper terminology, but
We can refer it, but I just, if I could allow myself to be recognized. I am very, if you haven't, in my State of the Town message, I actually addressed this unbeknownst to Councilor Mayle's motion that was coming up. I've been very much in favor of parking lots becoming, I believe that instead of focusing the money to where we have suggested here, that this could be an enterprise fund. The enterprise fund would pay for the plowing, would pay for the paving. A lot of these parking lots are a mess, paving-wise. I like the idea that the parking lot needs to be empty. I mean, I've heard from a couple of citizens, they didn't plow my parking lot. And I said, well, your car was in the way. Well, I couldn't get my car out because they didn't plow it. Well, you know what? The parking lot should be empty at 7 o'clock after a snowstorm so that the plows can get in and do it. However, if we're in there plowing and we're in there maintaining, it's costing us money. So if this was set up in some form of an enterprise fund where we could take that money that we were using for maintenance of the parking lots, that we were using to administer the program, in fact, if we could figure out a creative way to shift a piece of the enforcement. Councilor Boncory talked about the enforcement, that somebody's out there tagging when those cars are there. Somebody's enforcing the whole thing. And I don't think it should only be the new parking lots. I think it should be every single public parking lot in town should have a sticker program with an assigned space, the details to be worked out. I don't think it's appropriate to make it specific that the money goes to Parks and Rec or to the Khan Academy. However, if the parking lots aren't costing us any money to plow, and they're not costing us any money to fix, then there's money in the budget that can be specified out to that. So I think it's a very sound proposal. I think it needs some work as to exactly how the mechanics of it work. But I think it's, you know, it's disgusting to drive by these town parking lots the day after a storm, see cars in the position so that the plows can't get in. Then the plows have to go back later on. And then the person who was blocking the traffic goes and parks in the space that was plowed out, while Craig Mail is plowing his own driveway. So you might not notice this, but I do have a passion that thinks that we should pay for what we use. Council.
You know, and again, I'm not against the concept. I think it has some merit. I just think it needs a little bit more research. I know I don't know whether it was Council Del Vento or Lettieri had mentioned, the rink I think sits in its own space. I think we have to be cognizant of it. We were involved in a tournament just last weekend, and there was all kinds of parking going all around after snow hit at the same time, people parking, enforcement issues. You know, I think there's a lot of bugs that have to be worked out. I think we have to take each individual parking lot separately. I think we have an obligation to the neighbors in those particular areas who have relied on that parking. Whether they should have that parking as we go forward is another story, but who have relied habitually on using those parking lots during storms, so on and so forth. I think they deserve notice and to be heard. Again, I'm not opposed to the concept. I think it does have some merit. I just think the bugs need to be worked out, and I think we have to take everybody into consideration. People who can afford a space and people who potentially can't afford a space.
And I think that was Councilor Mayo's motion, was to discuss tonight, not to
Yeah,
actually
no,
do it.
And excuse me,
But I think it has to be done in one of two ways. And one way, since each one of these parking lots is in a different precinct, either have individual precinct meetings about those parking lots if you're going to do them individually. If we're going to do it as a whole, and it's going to be bringing money into the town, we should send it to the Economic Development Committee to hold public hearings first, maybe in each of those areas, because it does go townwide. Some are in the Highlands, some are in the center, and so on.
I think if it gets referred to a committee, that committee can have their public hearing, doesn't necessarily have to be in individual precincts.
Right.
If each precinct council wanted to hold a precinct meeting, he could. But where is the proper committee? Is it DPW? Is it rules? Or is it economic development? I don't know which committee would be the best. Councilor Mayor.
Can I just make one point clear?
Yeah.
These lots do not exist currently.
Well, two of them do.
Which two lots exist?
The George Street lot.
The George Street
And
lot
the
is
rink.
one. I stand
No,
corrected.
he's not talking about the rink. He's talking about
I'm
the
not talking
new
about the
parking
rink.
lot.
Oh, the new parking lot.
This
okay.
is not the rink. These are all lots that are coming into existence.
Yeah, you referred to it as the last one,
That's
but you
right.
mean the new parking lot.
It said the last.
My fault, my fault.
Right.
I don't mean the Larson Ring.
No, I know what you mean.
And I should note that this is from 6 in the evening till 8. So we're not talking about, you know, we're giving, I think there's a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for people. I know on Grover's Ave, there's no parking. They don't have anything. And this gives people, and I'll tell you, it's $30 a month. I happened to drive by one of these lots the other day, and across the street, the landlord has 2 properties completely unplowed, and every one of the tenants is parked in our lots. Now, this is an I know if I was a landlord and had no parking, and for $30 a month, I could rent a spot and add it into the rent, I think people would jump for that. I know there's a lot of people that have to walk a long distance to find a parking spot, and now you're going to have that opportunity. I think some of these are going to sell out.
Okay.
Again, I
Yes,
don't
Councilor
disagree with
Sylvan.
the concept. I just think it needs, I mean, to really vet this out, it has to go to a committee, and be it Economic Development or Public Works. I don't know if you want to assign it or if you want a council to assign.
And then
Would-
the rules.
Let me have some ideas on, it seems to be that Councilor Mayor wanted a discussion,
Right.
which we're having, and it seems to be the intent of the council that it should be referred somewhere. Economic Development, DPW, rules, but it could go to one of many. I really don't want to assign it to a joint committee. We've tried that before, and it didn't work out real well. But if it were assigned to any one of those three, then the members of the other two could participate. So, Councilor Barone.
I also think, there's a financial component of this that that needs to be worked out in terms of like what the actual cost and the income and outgo is going to be. So I think maybe the Finance Committee should be involved as well.
Mr. President?
I guess that what I would like to have, what I would like to do is assign it to one committee, refer it to one committee, and then that committee could get input from the others. I just don't know which one is the best. Well, I'd like to hear from the council. What do you feel is the best? Russ?
I think DPW...
Excuse me, Councilor Sanford.
That's okay. I think DPW, and I think, again, Economic Development could chime in, as well as Rules Ordinance or whatever, but I think that's an opportunity for the citizens to come together. I think each one of these parking lots has a personality of its own, the Crest Avenue. I think it's more of an economic development impact, potentially, especially with things coming forward.
This is the new lot at Crest Ave.
Right. The
The
new
one
one
that
that
doesn't
they're at.
exist. The one that
Okay.
doesn't exist.
Okay. But I still think it could have some impacts. It's still in a business district. We've got a study, we're talking about a traffic study, obviously it has to do more with the casino than anything, but we're also talking about a study relative to economic development. And I think this all can and does tie in to economic development, how deeply is to be determined. But I think appropriately, it may go to DPW first, with the opportunity for economic development to join in, as well as rules and ordinance.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor.
Okay, now specifically the George Street lot, which is in my precinct, I would like very much to hear from the residents of that area. I want them to have the opportunity to come and say their piece about this as well. So if we're going to refer it, I think we ought to send a mailing to that whole area and get those residents to have their input.
Any further discussion?
Council President, are we referring it to develop this further before we go?
Yes.
So I would say we just refer it to, is it Public Works, and then out of that, it can go to the public once it's actually formulated.
Okay, I, as council president, am referring this to the DPW, asking the cooperation from Economic Development
Yep.
and whatever other committees are appropriate. The Public Works DPW will vet this in an open session,
Yep.
a published meeting.
It will be a published meeting, Council President?
Yes, it'll be a posted meeting.
Could we also put a notice in the transcript?
I don't see why not, yeah.
Yeah, WCIT.
What'll happen is this committee, DPW, will meet and decide what they want to do with it, and then...
Then send it to rules to write it after.
Right, yeah. But at this point, I've referred it to DPW and asked to have input from Economic Development
Yeah.
and the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. The capital improvement plan, we're going to refer that to capital assets for review. So I'll just go ahead and refer that. Okay. The state of the town message, I promised that I was going to say that, I didn't promise. I plan to not read it. However, we have a 5-minute public comment limit. I'm going to read this in 3 minutes because I think there's a lot of stuff in here that talked about what we talked about earlier. Annually, the council president is required to give an annual state of the town message, and this is dated December 31st, 2013. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and express appreciation to all of our department heads, their staffs, as well as our appointed town boards, committees, town manager, and town council for their accomplishments in 2013. Their spirit of cooperation, enthusiasm, and effort is responsible for significant improvement in performance in the delivery of town services in Winthrop in 2013. The progress of the projects and improvements which will be monitored include but are not limited to the construction of the new middle high school, school improvement plan including keeping pace with today's technology, implementation of comprehensive town building maintenance plan, road, sidewalk, infrastructure replacement, including water sewer systems, capital improvement program for facilities updates, equipment, vehicle replacement, see the 5-year capital program which we talked about earlier, continuing cleanliness of overall attractiveness of the town, including ongoing park restoration, tree replacement programs, engineering and development for the Winthrop Street Corridor Improvement Program, development of a town-wide as well as regional economic development plan, including but not limited to Winthrop Center redevelopment, economic development task force adopted in 2013, and the approval of the regional MPAC Economic Development. Progress and completion of over $20 million in private investments currently underway, as well as the Winthrop Beach Restoration Project. Water sewer service efficiency efforts, including infrastructure and radio read program, media program. The Simon Streetlight replacement and the Blue Wave Power Purchase Program, in addition to the continued focus on the 2013 accomplishments, some of which are works in progress, which need to be monitored and continued. The following are proposed as we plan for the future of Winthrop. Further encouragement of investment in improving the existing residential and commercial real estate. Further encouragement in new development investment by streamlining, coordinating the permitting and zoning processes, as well as updating the ordinances and offering incentive for investors. Example, tax incentive programs. We talked about this one a little bit earlier. Intensified enforcement of all ordinances with focus on the newly adopted rental inspection ordinance and other health and safety related issues, which Mr. McKenna talked about, the increased inspection services. Development of mitigation package with Mohegan Sun, Suffolk Downs, should they be granted a license by the Mass Gaming Commission. Given the proposed purchase of a new ferry in addition to commuter service, increased recreational ferry service to include Boston Harbor Island tours, develop the Walk Winthrop program. Continue to improve the annual budgeting process, including budget planning, preparation, monitoring, providing for budget stability, sustainability, and improvement. I stole those 3 words from the town manager. Increased collection of all present available sources. Aggressive tax title and foreclosure measures, as well as real estate liens for outstanding water sewer obligations. Grant-seeking efforts. Some grants require matching funding, which must be provided for in the annual budget. Monitoring of fees for services as well as enterprise funds. These fees should cover the cost of the service plus produce a reserve. Interesting, we talked about that earlier. Improved enforcement of all town ordinances with strengthened inspectional services, focusing on the enforcement of rental inspection ordinance adopted in 2013, as well as residential trash dumpster ordinances, imposing fines for non-compliance. Stronger enforcement of all of these ordinances will not only produce revenue, but also encourage compliance, maintaining a cleaner, healthier town-wide environment. Consider of additional sources, an improvement in the existing real estate tax and development will increase Winthrop's real estate tax base, resulting in increased receipts. Establishment of parking enterprise funds or an enterprise account, municipal parking lots, create a paid sticker program, tag and tow, off-street parking, tag and tow for violations of parking stickers, street sweeping, snow emergency, and increase recreational ferry service to the Harbor Island. All the kinds of things that we've been talking about anyway, and that's my State of the Town message. Public comment.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
So there is, the school is moving forward on being a new school, and one of the elements of that is the concept of swing space. And they're now having a discussion on, the size and the need and the construction, and they're going to be bringing out some figures in regard to what the cost is going to be for the swing space to buy or to lease. And I think that we as a council should help direct the town to have a conversation or direct the town manager to give us a needs assessment of what may be the best approach. Would this be space that we may want to use in the future? Is leasing it good because we never need it again? Are there some other needs? If we're going to build it, how should we do it? And I realize that the school building committee has got their job to do, but I also think that if we can look at this as a little broader and not look at it as its own pocket, that we can, maybe, if there's a need, use this, buildings further downstream. So as the school committee building group starts to get their figures going, maybe that you could instruct the town along with your budget planning, what's our need for space? Do we have any needs? Do we, can we consolidate? Is this going to be important? And give us some indication, because I think we probably have a window of a month or two before they have to make a decision, and I think it'd just be a good conversation for the town to have, so.
Thank you. Yeah. Any further public comment? If not, Going to move to executive session. Could I have a motion? To go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, contract negotiation. Motion by Counsel Lettieri, seconded by Counsel Sanford. Chair declares that discussion of these matters in an open meeting could have a detrimental effect on the potential litigation and contract negotiation process. Council will return from executive session for adjournment only. Motion to go into executive session requires a roll call vote. Council Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counsel Del Vento.
Yes.
Counsel Boyajin.
Yes.
Counsel Lettieri.
Yes.
Counsel Sanford.
Yes.
Counsel Cala. Counsel Mayo.
Yep.
Counsel Boncory.
Yes.
Vice President Barone.
Yes.
Counsel President Gill.
Yes.